Everybody knows what profit is. It's the positive difference between what you invest and what you get in return. But what is this infatuation that capitalists have with profit? Because most people understand that nobody wants to do something for nothing. Everybody wants compensation for their work, whether it be simple ideas, starting a business, owning a business, or the labor put in to make that business go round. Everybody wants something to compensate for what they've put in. And as a result, what we have is this ripple effect that everybody everywhere, to one degree or another, is motivated by profit. Now, for some, profit is the sole motivator, the only reason for living for them. And for some, it's simply through force of circumstance that they have to be profit-driven in order to satiate the profit motives of the ones who are quote-unquote above them, landlords, business owners, shareholders, etc. Because if they didn't, then the profits of those people would not be met, and they would take away the means by which those below them could survive. This highlights the coercive nature of the profit motive, and of capitalism in general. You have a system where so few people own the means of production, and they're able to coerce, they're able to convince and force other people to behave in ways that are beneficial to them. They put in the labor, they create products, they deliver services, they even come up with ideas sometimes. And all of it in the name of putting more money in the pockets of the people who own the means of production. This is really no different than what happened in feudalism. It was another coercive system because the people in the day needed security. What happened? Well, the lord of the land, or the king, whichever, would say, okay, the vassals and the serfs would work for them, and they would give them protection with their knights, their law enforcement. Well, today, what we have is employers and employees. You have a small group of people at the top who own the means of production. And they say to the employees, the working class, we will give you security to put food on your table, to put a roof over your head, to get health care, to help your kids go to college, to get that new car you need, to get that surgery that you need. If, and only if, you produce the results that I want so that I can maximize my profits. And of course, there is simply this contract of honor that is supposed to be upheld, right? So it's, I will honor this agreement. Well, as we now know, just because somebody makes an agreement doesn't necessarily mean they're going to abide by it. And this is true nowadays with the hyper-financialization of every aspect of life. They say, okay, we're going to monopolize these areas of the markets now, and then you're not going to have any choice. You either maximize our profits, or you're left to die, basically. Well, this is the more sinister part of what's behind the profit motive. Because sometimes, if it gets deep enough, if you go far enough, the people who are driven by profit at the top will start seeing other human beings and other resources around them as mere tools to an end. They're expendable. But those people at the top, their profits are not expendable. Because they just need more. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no rationalization for it. None that would make sense anyway. They just want all that money to have it. And money makes the world go round, as they say. Everybody needs it. It's become a tool that everyone needs to survive. To buy food, to buy homes, to buy a car, to purchase insurance, to pay for weddings, whatever it is. But these people at the top who covet profit above all else don't see it that way. They don't care about anybody else. They've lost all connection to humanity. And everybody else around them, as a result, is forced through circumstance to adhere to the profit motive and the laws affiliated with laissez-faire capitalism in order to stand a chance of being able to survive. And a lot of this can be traced back to ancient times, before recorded history, even when humans first appeared. Even before that, when the animals of, however far back, they were competing for food to survive. They didn't know if they were going to get their next meal. So they just competed over one another, not knowing whether or not they could spread it around. And that was the way of things. In the hunting and gathering days of the humans, in the caveman days, in other words, they didn't know what existed beyond their little tribal boundaries. They didn't know what resources were out there. So when they came across new resources, what happened? They battled each other. They didn't know if there was any more out there to spread around. So they said, I'm going to kill you if you try to touch what I think is mine. And that's what happened for thousands of years. And sooner or later, people started expanding themselves, and they found out, yeah, there are greater boundaries out there. There are more resources. And things started to calm down a little bit, but at the same time, tools of war became more sophisticated because they needed to kill more people for the same reason, to preserve the domination of resources. Well, this is what capitalism did later after feudalism, was it said, okay, not only will we use armies when necessary, we're also going to use this little thing called money, currency, which is going to be both a tool as well as a weapon. So it will be a tool to conduct a more civilized form of commerce rather than bartering or warring it out over resources. And it's worked up to this point. But we're running into a situation now where those resources are being tested. The validity of currency as we know it today is also being tested. The people at the top have no qualms about printing more money whenever it suits their interests. But when helping the interests of the common person comes into play, all of a sudden, oh no, we can't print any more money, that would devalue the currency. But when they do it, it's like, oh yeah, print us all the money you want, yay, like this tidal wave behind me, right? Rich people would love it if this were a regular occurrence for them. Meanwhile, people who actually need the currency and not just covet it for the sake of wanting it and having it, they would use it for purposes that it needs to be used for, to help not just themselves, but everyone else they know. And that's how money should be used. It should be merely a tool. Not something to covet, not something to put above the value of human life. Not to be worshipped as if it were some form of deity, which unfortunately capitalist countries do tend to do. Which is really weird, because human beings invented currency. We created money with our bare hands, and the machines necessary to do it, naturally. But why are we worshiping at an altar of pieces of paper or coins? What's the point of that? You look at it from afar, it really doesn't make much sense. There's more important things in life than money. Food, shelter, clothing, healthcare, and education, opportunity. Those are more important than money. Money simply just serves as the intermediary between, a human being going after what he or she wants and being forced to compete with somebody on a physical or mental or both level for what they want. But when you start putting profit above everything else, it's just, it loses all rationality. It loses its purpose. And we basically revert back to the same primitive competing over resources mentality, including money, because money has become a resource at this point as well. Now, the interesting thing about money, in the way that it's being created lately, as of the last few hundred years or so, is that seemingly, it could be an endless creation of this money, but only so far as the natural environment produces the resources necessary to be able to create it on a physical level. Well, now we have digital currency, which, when you really get down to it, aside from the hardware used to connect us through the internet, money in this realm is unlimited. So the rationalization for managing money, keeping it as limited as possible to retain its value, loses all credibility. And now money can be printed on an infinite level and not lose its value if people who control it don't think it should. But because it gives them power over those who they view as beneath them, and this is extra important here. This is again part of the sinister nature of the profit motive. They can just print off all they want for themselves. And unbeknownst to those beneath them, if they say, hey, look, I see you guys are getting billions or trillions of dollars, how come we're not getting more to boost our standard of living as well? Oh, but we got to treat money like a common household. If we did that, it would devalue the currency and everything. We got to compete with these guys. All these excuses to not help people who need it the most. Why? Because when the rich have all this money, it gives them seemingly unlimited godlike power over those they view as beneath them. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So that sinister aspect of the profit motive just further bolsters the coercive nature of the profit motive and of capitalism in general. Because it allows them to impose on the masses anything they want and say, look, we have all of the money, all the power, you have nothing. You have to do what we say or you'll starve and die. And you can't do anything to stop us because we're going to pay people to come after you and suppress you and supplant you and kill you if necessary if you dare to stand up to us. And we have the unlimited checkbook and you don't. Knowing that, people tend to say, okay, I guess the world is what it is. We're just going to have to make do. Eventually, though, that does boil over. But even then, the people with nothing are at a huge disadvantage. So money in this instance is both coercive in its nature by those who control it, as well as sinister in what it inspires people to do to one another. And the thing is, the people at the top are frightened. This is why they do this sort of thing. They are actually frightened above all else that they are not going to get what they need to survive. And as a result, what they do is they force everybody beneath them to fork over everything they have because that's the only way they, on a primitive level, will ensure their own survival, which shows they don't care about anybody else. Well, there's a fallacy embedded in this mindset, and it's the notion that, well, I believe in profit. I believe in like the reason for life, like the meaning of life is the pursuit of profit. That's what capitalism is. It defines the purpose of life as the pursuit, acquisition, and expansion of profit. But now that you've got people in a position where they really have no other choice other than to rise up in arms and revolt, and it's like, well, we've created this system of laws and government and law enforcement to step their boot on your throat and crush it if necessary if you deviate from the system that forces you, the peasants, to adhere to the profit motive that we covet the most. So again, this is where the coercive and the sinister aspect come together and really show how evil the profit motive really can be. Now sometimes, if kept in check, the profit motive can be a good thing, but only as so far as you use those profits for the benefit of those around you. I believe it was Andrew Carnegie who once said that. And it's true. He had another saying, those who die rich die disgraced. Which is, those who take that to heart, which these days aren't that many billionaires, but anyone who did would be saying, okay, I took all this money in life, now I'm going to give it back to everybody as I approach death. Well, that doesn't excuse their behavior in life, unfortunately. And it doesn't make up for the lives that were lost and the lives that were ruined, the families that were broken up, the livelihoods that were taken away throughout the course of their natural life as a result of their decisions. So again, the profit motive has many fallacies attached to it. One of them is, and libertarians are pretty quick to jump on this as well, they're like, well, everybody's driven by profit as part of human nature. That's just human nature. Profit is human nature. Sometimes, but not always. Again, some of them covet by choice, others covet it by force of circumstance, because of those at the top who covet it by choice. Because they're the ones who end up with all the money, whereas everybody else is forced to adhere to their system. Hence why you have the media, the politicians, business executives, shareholders, and banks, all of them telling the mass of people, this is the way it is, shut up and accept it. Otherwise, you're radical, you're extreme, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy theorist, etc., etc. But it's only because by making you feel crazy can they really hope to squash any attempt at a revolution. Because attacking the psyche is often more potent than attacking someone physically. And again, that's part of the sinister nature of the profit motive, as well as the coercive. But of course, as I was getting at before, there's a fallacy embedded in this assumption that everybody is, by nature, motivated by profit. Well, that's just not true. You see, the fallacy here is that because the people at the top covet profit above everything else, and because this is really their little bubble, their own elite bubble, it's all they know and all they care about, they somehow get the impression, well, everybody else thinks that way too. So all we have to do is worry about all the profit we want, and everybody else will do the same for them, and all will be right with the world. Well, as I've stated before, and as we know from our everyday experiences, that's just wrong. Most people are driven by profit because they're forced to. And only by creating a system where money is reduced to the simple tool that it was originally intended to be, can we hope to begin moving in a more enlightened direction. But until then, you get a system where money basically dictates who gets to be at the top, who gets to live or die, who gets to eat and who doesn't, who gets health care, who doesn't, who gets to live in a home, who doesn't. And when it comes to the basic necessities, these should not be left up to profiteering purposes. These should not be left up to private markets. Markets only favor the rich. They are set up for and only benefit people with capital. And because the vast majority of capital is now in the hands of so few people, the majority of people now basically are reaching a point where they have no other choice but to get to a different system, because those who control the current profit-driven system will never give up the profits that they've gained, because that means giving up power over the people they view as beneath them. And on top of the sinister nature of just taking from everybody else because they can, the coercive nature is, well, this has to be the way it is because it's always been this way, and if we lose our power over you, you're going to be able to dictate to us our standard of living, and we're afraid of dying if that happens because of what we've done to you. But anyway, this is why we really need to take a hard look at ourselves, a hard look at how we view money, and a hard look at the profit motive in general. Sometimes, there is nothing wrong with making a profit as long as it's used for the right reasons. But if you're just going to make a profit just for the sake of accumulating it and hoarding it, there's no point of you even trying to do it. Because it serves no purpose at all other than hurting those around you and hurting yourself in the process, tearing at your very essence, separating you from the rest of humanity, effectively dehumanizing you and your outlook on the world. The rest of the people in the world deserve a better standard of living, a basic standard of living, and profit should be limited to the areas where it is proven to be more effective than something that is more in the realm of a socialistic approach. So that's my take on that. I hope this video helped in informing you guys about what profit really is and how it operates and why we need to take a hard look at ourselves and about capitalism and money in general. And I will be up shortly with an explanation on the hydrodollar system. Happy New Year, everybody. Enjoy your New Year's Day.